So when did this journey start, the acquisition of Bellator? How long ago did it commence?
We first called Paramount January this year.
Okay.
So it's been a...
If you don't know, because you've been living under a rock, Bellator was just bought by the PFL. Well, not exactly bought as far as money being exchanged, but the stock of Paramount is now invested into the PFL, and they've essentially become absorbed by the Professional Fighters League. The guy you see on screen here talking with Ariel Helwani is Don Davis, who is the PFL founder, and he has a whole different vision of really where they want to go with PFL and Bellator. This video is going to bring a lot of light to what fans are wondering, like what's going to happen with Bellator. Let's be honest, in recent years, Bellator has skyrocketed in the opposite direction. I should say they've nosedived as far as fan interest and as far as production quality and promotion. They've gone way downhill. They still have elite fighters though, and PFL obviously picking up on that, becoming a top player in the MMA leagues of the world. They want to take full advantage and buy a chunk of the pie and bring in some savages that could really bring more value to the PFL product. This video here is Don Davis talking with Ariel Helwani, and we got like some in-depth moments, and I wanted to bring them up. I got them time-stamped up next to me, so we're going to get into it. Make sure you guys smash that like button, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe. This is everything you need to know about PFL's purchase of Bellator, the acquisition, as they call it, of Bellator. All right, big one here is at 342. We're going to get things started off. Let's bring it up right here. Let's listen to them talk for a second.
We don't want to really sell low. We want to sell low and have an opportunity to make it high. And so therefore a deal was made.
Okay, so when you say they, you mean Paramount is now a
small minority owner of the PFL.
Interesting. Okay, so you didn't have to actually exchange any cash in this deal. What a deal. What percentage?
Small.
Okay.
They won't give you the exact details of how much the percentage Paramount now owns of PFL, but they've invested into the PFL product. Now they have a piece of the pie that supposedly is small, but enough so where they're going to keep Bellator around. You'll hear later on in this interview what exactly is next for Bellator, which I'll actually bring up right now.
The focus on the go forward is we have a vision for a reimagined Bellator.
What does that mean when you say that?
Which I talk about in the press release. For fans that have liked Bellator, they'll still like it. But for us, the PFL has always been meritocracy and transparency.
Let's be honest, a lot of fans are not liking how Bellator's looked for the past few years. So we're fully open to a reimagined Bellator.
As you know, the season format, win and go home. I mean, win in advance, lose and go home. There's a place for a one-off event product, much like the UFC, where a matchmaker can come in and fans really want to see Ariel and Don fight. Well, in the season, that may never happen, right? Because we don't make the fights at the PFL. The fighters make the fights. The Bellator brand in the PFL portfolio will stand for one-off event product.
Okay.
One-off event product with the Bellator name, meaning that it's not going to involve the tournament fighters because PFL is still planning to do the season thing with the weight classes that they have. But the Bellator fighters and PFL fighters who are not into the tournament are now going to be fighting in Bellator, it seems like, or at least in the Bellator series.
So we'll have 8 events a year. We call it the Bellator International Champion Series. And I'll come back to why is that. These are one-off event products. So think of it as the one-off event product from the PFL platform. So whether you're a Bellator fighter or a PFL fighter, you're all now PFL fighters.
Interesting.
You're all in the pool.
Okay.
Certain fighters like to take one of our own fighters, Showtime Pettis.
Anthony Pettis, I actually think that's a good idea because he's not built for the tournament thing. But if you can get Anthony Pettis in some fun fights at 170 pounds over in Bellator / I guess Bellator series, we'll call it, the international series, I think that could do some fan interest, especially like a Patricky Pitbull versus Pettis fight. I know Patricky's at 155. Maybe Pettis would be, willing to make another cut down because I feel like he's going to struggle against the best guys at welterweight in Bellator too.
You know what? That season product wasn't great for him. He's probably better fighting twice a year on a one-off event just to take one of our own. Fans love him. He can get ready for that. The season's too hard at this stage of his career. That season's the toughest test in MMA.
I'm going to fast forward a bit through this. This part here is not as necessary as I considered it to be. Yeah, this is good.
On Bellator, our media operations, our ad sales force, our business capabilities, we'll rebuild a lot of that. But the product and the brand, we will revitalize. More technology, a little bit better production, and mostly international cities.
Definitely the live stats on screen.
Big demand internationally. You even mentioned earlier on your show. UFC hasn't tapped into all that international demand. So we'll do probably 6 or maybe 7 of those 8 shows outside the U.S.
Look at that. 6 or 7 of these Bellator shows are international events. So I guess they're going to try to use the Bellator talent that is like somewhat homegrown, that has name value, like, I don't know, Irish fighter like James Gallagher or Charlie Leary, put them on cards there. But they're still going to have the mainstay names, you know, in the higher fights on the card, but they want to stack it with guys on the undercard that I guess represent hometowns. But if you're an American fighter and you're fighting under that Bellator banner, you're essentially joining an international fight promotion with just like one card promised for America with Bellator.
Where almost all the PFL league season is in the U.S.
Okay, mostly Europe? Or even
no, I would say all over. Okay. But I would say at least half of those, 4 of those 8 would be in Europe. But I think there's big demand in Latin America, big demand in the Far East.
Okay, where will those events air?
That's interesting because it can be all over, anywhere besides USA for one event. And they're saying how PFL does their events in America. It's just a weird crossover, right? Because they're essentially like building 2 promotions in one, the non-tournament series and the tournament series with the Bellator name, which I think might just be temporary, to be honest.
We will announce that in January. Okay. One thing that Bellator, unfortunately, not their fault, they've moved around so much the last 3 years in terms of media distribution under Paramount. There wasn't a consistent home for fans.
So they want to find a new home for Bellator. They want to keep it to something that we see it all the time in the same spot. How Bellator was, you know, at one point with Spike TV, Paramount Network, and then with Showtime at the end. I think their best home was Bellator on Spike, the OG days, because like everybody was tuning in at that point. Let's fast forward to 10:06 here.
More access and give the brand more promotion.
All the fighters that are currently under contract with Bellator, do you know the number off the top of your head?
Yeah, 210.
210. Are all of those coming over?
All of them are coming over.
Okay.
Damn, they're signing the whole roster. A lot of prelim guys. I guess they're kind of trying to give everybody a shot, and then there's definitely going to be cuts. I'm telling you, they're not keeping 210 guys. No chance.
Okay. Part of what we did, and obviously it would have been better for PFL to only take certain fighters.
Sure.
We thought it was better for the sport and better for those fighters to take them all. So every fighter will at least start with the season. Now, over time, just like the PFL, we'll upgrade the rosters. So
we'll upgrade the rosters, yeah. They're not keeping 210 guys on for long. They'll give them a shot. I'd be surprised if all 210 guys get a fight in PFL. I think some contracts will eventually get bought out or they'll move on to other organizations. I can't see all 210. I can't.
We've upgraded 40% year over year at PFL. Mm-hmm. So those who don't win or don't perform or fans don't respond to, likely won't be there over time.
Fans don't respond to. Had to throw that in. If you're not bringing the fan power, they don't want you. Makes sense.
And we hope they're all excited about this mission.
Okay, I would imagine that is music to a lot of their ears. Why, these 8 events that you're talking about, the one-offs, because you are the PFL, right? That's the brand you care most about. Why not just call them the PFL International Series? Why are you keeping the Bellator brand alive?
Yeah.
I was wondering this exact same thing. Good question by Ariel here.
First thing I want to say is, look, as an entrepreneur, I don't know. We don't have all the answers.
Okay.
Right? There's some things that we try that don't work, and then there's some things we try that are home runs. Right? So we try to come up with what we think is the best thing for consumers, in this case, fans all the time. We always start fan first, fighter first. That tends to make the most money. But that doesn't mean you're right all the time.
Right.
So we believe that the PFL stands for meritocracy and transparency.
Very politically correct. I'll say this. They don't want to kill Bellator off because they want to absorb some of the fans. And I think the long-term plan is to turn this Bellator International Series into the PFL International Series. I have a hard time seeing the Bellator product being run for more than 2 years. It just doesn't really make sense to me because that's a different promotion. And I feel like it can cause some confusion too.
Bellator product is a one-off event product, so it's different. The Bellator also has a following over 12 years. So we think
the following over 12 years. I'm telling you, they're trying to build brand recognition of PFL and take some of those Bellator fans that know about Bellator and will watch this transitional period.
If we keep those 2 concepts together, that's a pretty big opportunity in the market space. That from the Professional Fighters League is the Bellator brand, and that is 8 great one-off events every year where we match make, regardless of where the fighters are from Bellator or PFL or we recruit them from UFC. So we thought that was a great opportunity to keep that.
I get that. So they're trying to use Bellator as a chance for the PFL cards to not just be tournament cards. And they're just using the Bellator name for the time being to build that recognition until it becomes PFL Championship International Series. Like, I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing in 5 years, we still got Bellator's name on it. That's not the name of the production. That's not the name of the company. I don't know.
Versus Bellator champions. That would be 7, I think, right? You have 7. That would have to be before the season starts, right? So it would be the ones who are crowned champions on Friday, correct?
Yes, ideally we'd like to.
Yeah, they want to do Bellator versus PFL champs, but like an unfortunate truth of the matter is they don't really have that many like intriguing fights besides champ versus champ name value. But as far as the actual fighters, like I'll run through the list of what we'll get. Ryan Bader versus the winner of Renan Ferreira versus Denis Goltsov, which takes place this Friday. I think Goltsov probably beats him, but live fight. Bader versus Goltsov's a cool matchup, don't get me wrong, and it's new blood for Bader. It's not like a, pay-per-view seller. Vadim Nemkov versus the winner of Impa Kasunganai versus Josh Silveria. Yeah, I think Nemkov runs either one of them over, and I really like Impa Kasanganay, but I'm being fair here and honest. Johnny Eblen, there's no middleweight division in PFL, so what the hell is he doing? That's something that I'm confused about, right? The middleweight division doesn't exist. Eblen's now just going to be, what, recycled through the old Bellator guys? Weird. Jason Jackson versus Sabito Sai or Magomed Karamov, the winner of that. Cool fight. I'd be interested to actually see that matchup, especially because I think it's Magomed Karamov. Usman Nurmagomedov versus Clay Collard. The issue is we still got that $1 million tournament, which they'll talk about a bit more. We just sent a can $1 million at Alexander Shabalai. Sorry, you don't get your shot for it. I know it wasn't supposed to be against Usman because he tests positive for steroids. Is Usman Nurmagomedov even going to pass the PFL drug testing? Because people popping over there, and he just popped in Bellator. And who the hell's popping in Bellator for the most part? Patricio Pitbull versus Jesus Pineda, Gabriel Alves Braga. I mean, that could be cool. But Patricio Pitbull, I feel like, has deserved like more big name fights at this point after recently losing to Sergio Pettis, looking to challenge for that bantamweight belt. And then he fights Jesus Pinedo, who was unknown earlier this year. Weird. Patchy Mix, there's no bantamweight division in PFL. So two of the best champs, Eblen and Patchy Mix, nobody's there for him. And then Chris Cyborg versus Larissa Pacheco, Marina Makatina, winner. It's actually going to be against Kayla Harrison. They're not going to do that. Kayla Harrison's got a big fight coming up Friday. They want to use her. She's the big name. They always talked about a Cyborg fight. And then Liz Carmouche, the flyweight champ. There is no flyweight division there.
To make it in the first quarter. Weird. Because the season starts in April, and we're going to try to launch the Reimagine Bellator in March. So we'd love to do that event in February.
Reimagine Bellator in March, and they want to do the PFL versus Bellator card in February. November, fights taking place. I don't think everybody's going to be able to make that date, but I guess we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll pull it off. That'd be pretty sick. If they pull it off, that would be dope. I'd like to see it. I want to see what happens. All the Bellator guys kick their ass, but you never know.
Good. Now, barring health of all the fighters.
Sure.
Because we want that to be the best card possible. But we'd love to do that in February if we could.
Do you have a date yet?
No, we don't.
Location?
We're talking to people, and we have tentative dates and tentative people, but nothing to announce yet. We hope to be able to announce it before Christmas.
So I might be getting in the weeds here, but, like two of the best champions on the Bellator roster are champions of weight classes that you don't have.
Yes.
I was just saying it. The middleweight and the bantamweight champ, two divisions they don't have. They got to invest in those divisions now.
PFL.
It's unfortunate.
Johnny Eblen, Patchy Mix.
It's unfortunate.
What happens there? They're just left out?
Yeah. So there, it wouldn't be legitimate.
Right.
You know, so, of course, they could fight on the Champions Series of Bellator. Some of them may even make our pay-per-view cards next year. Right. Even higher elevation. Okay, he kind of dodged the question there. He doesn't go into detail talking about their plans with bantamweight and middleweight. So they're just going to recycle the Bellator talent. If I'm Patchy Mix and I'm Johnny Eblen, at this point, I don't know how many fights left in the contract. Maybe they get some dubs. I'm looking at UFC. If I'm Patchy Mix, I'm looking at UFC. If I'm Johnny Eblen, I'm looking at UFC. I think that's where they're going to go because those divisions don't exist in PFL, and nothing from what Don Davis is saying is like, yo, those are divisions we're trying to work on. We're trying to create X tournament next year at that weight class. It doesn't seem like that's even a thing. It doesn't seem like that's on his mind at all. I don't think so. Which is unfortunate because those are two of the best guys. This pound for pound 1 and 2 probably, followed by Nemkov at 3. Now where we have 30% of our roster ranked in the top 25 in the world, same as UFC. That is the available creativity to give to fans. How do we put that roster together in great products? Some will be in the league season. And if we do that, the ranking for the league season. They're talking about how comparing like on Fight Matrix, the ranked guys, that they have the same percentage of top 25 fighters in the world as UFC. Next year, if you took an average fight card, would be 40. The UFC average product, non-pay-per-view, is 70. This is Fight Matrix to put the quality of we put together. This year, it would have been 80 in the PFL. Think of how good that would be. So the creativity. He's trying to say they're going to have better fights than UFC. I mean, you can say anything on paper. I mean, reality speaks differently. And let's be fair, Fight Matrix rankings, as much as we want to say they're, non-biased, legit, they're still rankings. And rankings, nonetheless, don't prove everything. Some guys, are savages that are unranked, for sure. Let's fast forward a bit. I want to get to more of the juice here, more of the meaty shit.
In addition to a Bellator PFL card? Like a Bellator PFL card would be a regular card and there would still be like another higher tier?
Remember, next year we're going to do 2 PFL pay-per-view super fights.
Yes.
That's where Jake fights, where Francis fights.
Right. And
the PFL pay-per-view super fights with the Jake Paul MMA debut, which I guess is going to get a lot of eyes. It'll be odd, though. And then the Francis Ngannou return to MMA and debut in PFL, but like he's dialed into boxing right now.
And that's an addition, because I mean,
we're always gonna have those two.
Okay, but a PFL Bellator super fight card feels pay-per-view worthy, no?
That could be its own pay-per-view next year.
Interesting. Okay. Do you have an update on Francis? Will his next fight be for PFL? Because I know you said it could either be first quarter or last quarter.
The same two things I told you last time with transparency. One, we don't know, other than he will fight with PFL in 2024. We don't know if it's first or last quarter. And I still think.
Well, he's going to fight in PFL, but there's no name for him. What is he going to do? Fight the Bader Goltsov winner? I don't see it.
That it will be a mixed rules fight. And I still think Deontay Wilder is the most likely opponent.
He's doing the Deontay Wilder fighting mixed rules, which I don't know. We're doing straight hands boxing with MMA gloves. It's funny to have a promotion that lacks the name value, but still has good production and a lot of money behind it. But as far as Francis Ngannou, the biggest fight in this promotion for him is to fight a non-MMA fighter, to take on a boxer in a mixed rules fight. It's kind of funny to me, just compared to like the UFC. And we're just talking about how PFL is all the top ranked guys, etc. But you don't have anybody for the heavyweight champ. And we're going to do a mixed rules fight with Francis Ngannou and Deontay Wilder.
That would be unbelievable. I think the second and third options are much less compelling. So we don't want to force those options in order to get it in Q1.
Who are they?
Much less compelling.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, those much less compelling options, they're not even worth mentioning, to be 100% honest. It's like, come on. He also touched on the Jake Paul debut.
Was always Q4.
Okay.
Because for him to get good in his standards for an MMA fight that's legitimate worthy, he says he needs that year. He started training a month ago in the smart cage, down.
1 month of MMA, Jake Paul, they'll get him in the cage next year.
Home. So I think that is October, December 2024.
The Nate Diaz team was very upset after your comments last time.
Yes, they were.
They were.
Yeah.
Would you like to try to fix that relationship?
We respect Nate. He accepted that fight. The fans would love that fight, and we would love to have him do that fight. And we're offering him more money than other people because that's respect. Mm-hmm. So I think that if they listened to the whole comments, then they would be much more pleased than they were with the edited comments. Yes.
You think it could happen?
The one thing about Nate or fighters or entrepreneurs, they're their own men.
Right.
They do what they want to do.
Well, he's offering Nate Diaz a huge deal. He's going to offer him $15 million, $10 to $15 million to fight Jake Paul. A Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz fight. It's a gimmick fight in MMA for sure, especially a debuting Jake Paul. I would absolutely love to see Nate strangle him in under 3 minutes. And I think that probably is what happens, to be 100% honest with you guys. I don't see it being like all that competitive. Come on. I know a lot of people have talked about, oh, Jake's athletic, Nate's small, whatever. Nate should handle Jake Paul in a mixed martial arts fight. The jiu-jitsu difference should be like scary vast.
There'll be 3 times more events in our combined company next year than everybody had this past year. We'll have 32 events in the combined company next year across 5 different franchises. So
it's weird how they're calling them franchises. These are like the different PFL products, like the Bellator series, the Challenger series, the actual PFL playoffs and tournament series, and then like the, Europe series, Latin America, etc. 32 events is a lot. The issue is some of those events will not be available to everybody around the world because the international stuff normally is not aired stateside.
More opportunities, bigger opportunities. So if you're a fighter, today is absolutely the best day for you.
How will you determine who goes where ultimately?
We'll discuss with them and their managers.
Okay. So there could be a Bellator fighter who's like, hey, you know what? I like this PFL
100%.
tournament idea or
100%.
season. Okay.
I expect half.
What if a PFL fighter says I like this?
100%.
Okay.
None of us are good at our jobs when we're not happy. None of us.
So here he just pretty much is discussing that it's going to be half of Bellator's guys he expects to do the tournament. But I'm confused, though. What about the PFL guys that you already have in the tournament? So what I'm wondering is this next season, how are we picking our tournament fighters? How are we going to do the season? How many guys are we going to have fighting in the season? I don't know. Just some questions. And he didn't go into elaborate detail on that. Is there going to be more fighters during the season this year? Maybe do 16 instead of 8? Are we going to have extras? Like, I don't know. I wonder how it's going to end up working out comparative to, previous seasons where it was just PFL guys. Because like 210 Bellator fighters and claiming that he thinks 50% spread amongst the weight classes, that's a shitload of guys per weight class still. It's a big addition. That's a big addition for sure. That's major. He did.
So within reason, I want everybody to be happy. That's my goal. Because that way they perform better and they stay longer. So
I don't know where it is, but he says PFL International Championships instead of Bellator International Championships here soon.
I've never lost a fighter. That's why Francis came here. That's why Jake came here. Listen, respond. Custom deal, right? Happiness. So everybody at Bellator today has spoken so highly of being at Bellator. I want him to speak so highly about being at PFL in the exact same way. we didn't get to where we are by being anything but a great company for employees, for fighters, for business partners. So I would hope that within 3 months, they say the exact same thing. This is just as good, but better. And so part of that would be listening and showing them the different opportunities. We fully expect that half the fighters will move to the PFL league season. They'll see that as a better opportunity for them. I bet half will stay and call it the PFL International Champion Series.
PFL International Championship Series. There it is. Not the Bellator International Championship Series. The long-term goal is the PFL International Championship Series. This Bellator mirage they're putting in front of you, it's a temporary thing just to transition the fans. 100% just exposed it. Absolutely true. I'm telling you, that wasn't intentional for him to say that, but it's a real thing. That's where they're going, bro. Come on. They're not going to keep Bellator around. It's a different league. It's going to stick around just for a bit till they acquire more fans. Then it's PFL International Championship Series.
They were in the midst of a $1 million tournament for their lightweight division. Will that conclude?
I don't know the answer to that.
He's got no idea if they're doing the $1 million tournament. If you're Alexander Shabalai, who just beat Patricky Pitbull this past Friday, you're punching air. You might be punching walls because you had a chance at $1 million. No, well, we have another $1 million tournament. I got to go through the ringer of hell after I already earned my $1 million shot. I think that it would be very bad on the, being so pro fighter to not give that shot to Shabalai for that $1 million. I believe it was supposed to be against Brett Primus since the champion Usman Nurmagomedov tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. You don't blame Usman Nurmagomedov, or you do blame Usman Nurmagomedov, I should say, but you don't blame Shabalai for that miss, and then we don't do him getting a shot at $1 million. It's not even like I'm invested in that tournament at all emotionally, but holy shit. You put $1 million in his face and you take it away, that's going to be an angry employee. And since Mr. Don Davis is so pro-fighter, so pro-employee, you better bring him over. You better give him the chance. You have to. You have to. And he didn't confirm whether he would or he wouldn't.
That's also.
You will make that determination. I know you have talked to Scott. What's your feeling on the likelihood of him coming over?
I don't know. I
wouldn't say 50-50 or?
No, I wouldn't even. No,
would you like for him to come over?
I would like for him to come over.
You would like?
They want Scott Coker still as the face. That's interesting. So he'll still run the Bellator series, but for how long is he sticking around? Just weird, man. I know he's jumping into it blind. He really doesn't know what the future holds for the PFL and Bellator, championship series, whatever the hell we want to call it, the international series. Bringing Scott over, it's like, I'm telling you, it's like a mirage. They want to keep it looking somewhat like Bellator for the fans, but I think we just got to accept that Bellator is no longer Bellator. The name can stay the same, but it's not the same. It's not the same. Let's see, 26-35 I want to bring up.
Once we do that, get into too many disagreements.
A staple of the PFL product are the uniforms. I have strong feelings on the uniforms.
Yeah, you don't like the uniforms.
I despise the uniforms.
I love everything that
you're doing.
I listen to the show.
The uniforms sticking around. Are we keeping uniforms? He'll answer you right here.
Everything you do. Yeah. There's nothing I hate more because fighters need to be unique. They have to have their personalities. Mike Tyson walked out all black.
Yes.
Chuck Liddell walked out with ice shorts. Tito Ortiz had the fire. PFL doesn't do this. Well, Bellator, they did do this. They let the fighters wear it. Well, they now have to wear uniforms.
Yeah, look, let me go further. Remember, when you have different brands and different products, they all have indigenous dimensions to them. They all have their own elements. Bellator will have elbows.
Bellator will have no uniforms. They'll have the free reign of not wearing a uniform. But the uniforms aren't going away for PFL fighters, especially in that tournament, because he's trying to make it a league. He says himself, it's trying to be like the NBA, right? He sees himself as a commissioner of sorts, and he's trying to run it as a sports league instead of just a fight promotion, which I admire the attempt here. And I'm very excited to see what they're able to do. And I hope that the products are stellar because I would love to have more high-level quality events run throughout the year. But I'm going to keep my expectations on the lower side because things are just a little strange right now.
It's a one-off event product. PFL league season doesn't have elbows. Why? That can't work for the health when you have to fight 4 times in 8 months.
The health when you have to fight 4 times in 8 months. I don't think that having a uniform or not affects anybody's health. I think that's a big mishap by what he said there. I don't know what health. I think they want to control, the revenue stream and the uniform. Come on, there's still some control. Listen, I think Don Davis has got a good idea. The heart's in the right place. But everybody that's against the UFC, you know how they try to fucking play it? They try to play it like I'm a saint. I'm the angel on this side. Dana's the devil. Dana's more cutthroat and rash. I'm a sweetheart. I'm so for the fighters. It's money-centric, man. And the only way they're able to get these guys to come over from UFC or whoever from wherever is because they're offering them more potential for the revenue, right? They got to pay them more. Money talks, number one. They got to pay them more. So then they're taking less home. And I'm just thinking long run, like how much in the hole is PFL with this new Bellator promotion, right? Maybe they're not their whole product with the Bellator promotion. I don't know. I'm interested to find out. I'm interested to hear more as time goes on. I think it's going to be very interesting.
But certain things that we do that people really like, there'll be more technology here. It'll be easier to understand and follow here.
The main thing I like that he said, it's easier to understand and follow. Don Davis, if you're watching, which hopefully you are, I think that you got to listen to me. We need a fight library similar to UFC Fight Pass for all PFL fights, all Bellator International Series of fights, whatever you want to call it, whatever name. Fights under your banner, we need a digital library because it's disgusting to me when Bellator literally doesn't have all of their fights online. Oh, but you can find it through the prelims. Oh, they have it on Paramount. I've looked through Paramount. They don't have every single event. There's certain things missing. And I think it should be easier to access, especially for me, someone that covers the sport. Then I have to now fast forward through a whole freaking card and find exactly where the fight starts. Give us a digital library of all individual fights. I'm telling you, it's more fan-centric, especially for the betting side. A lot of fight fans are throwing money on fights, and we like to do our own research and dig into the fighters, and you're not going to remember everything from the last time they fought. And I think it's much easier with the digital library. So being very fan-centric, a digital library is paramount. Number one. We'll throw that word out there for them. One final paramount call.
Show will be a little bit brighter. We use more lights and more angles. So certain things are overall good. And then each one of these events, we want to have more meaning, which is why they're all going to have 2 co-mains that are for belts. So every 8 events, you'll know what it stands for. 2 titles on the line, every single event, both co-mains.
I like how they're doing 2 titles every event. They're doing 8 events a year, though. So it's every other month? Well, not really. That's 6 months. But like this, so there might be 2 events in a row, month to month. But it's not like a consistent product.
So we're going to try to also bring structure and meaning to that series, much more than...
It's a subset of PFL.
Why is this happening, each year?
Love it.
So when we say reimagine, we really do mean reimagine. When we say revitalize, we really mean revitalized. We didn't say start over. Right? We're going to take what's good, and we're going to improve where it can be improved.
New logo?
I really hope that they improve, but like they keep like a little flair of the OG days of Bellator, but they got to remix it. I think we need like a new commentary. We can keep some of the guys around, but the broadcast team is actually the next thing we're going to talk about.
Refresh logo, probably. Just like people refresh logo.
Refresh logo, yeah, which makes sense. We got to get a new logo in. Bring a new logo on. Let's refresh it. Let's spruce it up a little bit. Keep it Bellator-esque.
People are going to say,
so far I'm answering everything.
You're doing a fantastic job,
Yes.
and this is great. Broadcast team Morrow now is the voice of Bellator. Would you like to see the broadcast team follow?
Yeah, and all this, I haven't talked about any elements of the product. George Greenberg, our executive producer, fantastic. We'll probably have, a separate production team, just like we do for PFL Challenger Series, just like we have a separate team for PFL pay-per-view, because all these have different voices.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, listen, PFL, I'm the play-by-play guy. Give me a fucking buzz at this point. But no, on a real note, I think that for PFL, they should bring in the Bellator, Moro Ronaldo. I don't want Big John on the mic, man. I hate being a Big John hater because he's a, cemented figure in MMA history, but I just don't think he's an optimal commentator for this new look product that they're looking to go for. Don't do what Bellator did, which, kind of crashed the numbers. People, I think, overall, a lot of my chat, a lot of people that follow the channel were not crazy about Big John's commentary. Nonetheless, if you have Big John in the mix, have him as one of the commentators, but I don't think he's the interviewee. I don't think he's that guy. We got to get somebody else in the mix for that. I think Moro, keep him there, bring the OG with them. I feel like we gotta give a little more Ronaldo flair. Keep him on the lineup, man, especially because Showtime's done with and he's out of a job. So PFL, help our guy out. But we don't know exactly who they're going to bring in. And I'm curious to see. Maybe we go OG of OGs. Jimmy Smith. I'd like to see him back.
They all have different, remember, there's a PFL look and feel, but they all have distinct voices and distinct elements to them. Bellator will have the same distinct voice. What is that? How do we develop that? That's all the work we have to do in the next 4 months.
How close do you feel like you are now to the UFC? I saw a press conference recently where Dana White was talking about 200 million, 300 million. Clearly, those numbers were wrong. And I think, in fairness to him, he was sort of, your opinion, you seem, based on what I'm hearing here, it feels like it's a great deal. You feel very bullish on what you just purchased. How close do you feel like you are now to the UFC?
The UFC is still king. Come on. There's a different level, all right? But PFL is doing a great job of threatening the UFC with a promotion that is putting a lot into itself and actually looking to compete and try and, as Don Davis says, co-lead with the UFC. It definitely wouldn't be right away. The best way for them to, somehow tie up with the UFC is going to be absorbing a lot of the new talent on the come up for the next generation. They won't beat them now, but I think if I'm PFL, my plan is not to beat the UFC today. It's beating post Dana White UFC. Then they're live for a fight.
Everybody knows Dana well enough that he only dismisses things that worry him, or else he just doesn't comment. He didn't comment.
I don't think Dana's worried. They have so much firepower. Like, they might be like, all right, PFL's trying a little harder. We'll step it up even more. As a fan, I think this is good for us because I think it also forces the UFC to be better too.
Comment on the PFL for 4 years because he wasn't worried. He's commented on the PFL a lot the last 6 months. He's worried. What specifically worried him about Bellator is the metrics we put on the press release. 30% of that roster ranked in the top 25.
I don't think Dana's worried about that. I don't think Dana's worried about that stat. I'm sorry. I don't think that stat really means a ton. I think Don Davis, you're a good-hearted guy. I think you got your head in the right place, but you're going by the stat. But the reality is it's still the UFC. Come on now. Where's a star in PFL? Tell me what name you got. Besides Francis Ngannou and Jake Paul, somebody that's already fought in your promotion, who you got? Come on, man. Come on, man. This game right now is still UFC here. PFL, hey, you know what? They're doing good, and I'm glad that we're going to have a good number 2 in the game, especially stateside. And I like that they're bringing, events that aren't just tournaments, even though it doesn't need to be under the Bellator name. But, we'll hold on to Bellator for nostalgia for a while, and I'm an OG Bellator fan.
They still own the top 5, 1 through 5. So-called pay-per-view cards. We couldn't compete with them right now, which is why we're only going to have 2, and they have 12. Right? But if you say I'm turning on TV on
they really can't compete on the pay-per-view stuff. Like, even if you look at this weekend, the title card that they have, the $50 pay-per-view, I see everybody on Twitter already bitching about the price.
ESPN Saturday night, or I'm going to tune in Friday night to watch his Bellator International Series or PFL, our cards will be better. Better. Because what they put on this
cards will be better. I mean, maybe. I don't know. Like, it depends on card to card.
Year was ranked 70, and what we're going to
actually make sure that we have knockout a night, submission of the night. Like, give me performance bonuses, Don Davis, for this Bellator series, because that was Bellator's biggest problem later, is they weren't incentivizing violent fights and finishes. Incentivize that. Incentivize that. And the product is better for sure.
on next year's ranked 40.
That's being more fighter-centric for real.
Why he said, I don't know why in God's green earth anybody's buying this. Because he's smart, and he knows that. UFC ain't the NFL. We're not the XFL, but he wants you to think that. And it's just a matter of time before that starts to get more well-known. And we're not number 2. We're a co-leader. You don't want that. That's what's going
on. You have a pay-per-view this Friday. I've seen some blowback from the fans on the price tag. I'm sure you've seen this as well. Yes. You're pretty connected online.
Yeah, the blowback of the price tag. I literally was just talking about. I think the UFC is the NFL. And maybe we'll say the PFL is challenged. Are they the XFL? They kind of are, though. Better maybe, but not yet. Definitely not yet. The idea is better than the XFL, but the reality is no, not yet.
It's $49.99 on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. The main card prelims are just with the ESPN Plus subscription. Can you explain why you chose that price tag?
Well, first of all, ESPN chooses price tag just as they do for UFC.
So you have no say in this?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, the price tag, ESPN chooses it. They have no say, supposedly. Same with the UFC. 50,000 pay-per-view buys or more, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm thinking like 60K.
I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
So I would address it anyway. I'm not hiding behind that.
And I'll end up being the guy buying it because I'm doing a fight companion. So make sure you guys tune into that.
6 title fights plus Kayla Harrison's return. Those are 7 of the biggest fights of the year. I'd put that card up against the best UFC card this year. So
this part's funny to me, man. Put that up against the best UFC card of the year. Come on, yo. I don't even have the card by, I don't have it in front of me is what I'm saying. Like, I don't know it by heart. Hold on. I'm bringing it up on my phone because I don't want to mess up the screen here. Let's see who is on this card that's better than the UFC card this year. Chill. We got Aspen Ladd on the main, who got cut from the UFC. Clay Collard, Oliver Aubin Mercier. That's like an unranked fight between like solid MMA fighters that were once in the UFC. Renan Ferreira, Goltsov. It's a cool heavyweight fight, but not even close. Larissa Pacheco, Marina, not even close. Magomed Karamov, Sabito Say, not even close. Impa Kasunganai, not even close. Kayla Harris and Aspen Ladd. It's a good fight. Ray Cooper III versus Derek Brunson. Good fight. Like, there's good fights. Jesus Pinedo, Gabriel Alves Braga. Good fight. There's good fights on the card, right? Bubba Jenkins, Chris Wade, number 17 between these guys. Ali Walsh versus Galarza. We got an amateur fight, Ali's grandson. Then we got some no names. Jesse Stern, I recognize. Phil Karapaka. All right, nonetheless, it don't matter. What I'm saying is, Don, chill out for a second. Chill out. You're getting a little bit delusional, okay? it's not even close to a UFC pay-per-view card. It's not a fight night either. Now, I like where your head's at. Yes, there's titles on the line. Yes, there's money on the line. I support you. I bought the pay-per-view last year, and I'll buy this one. But let's not be delusional, okay? Because the UFC is levels above right now, all right? Come on. I'm skipping to the next topic because what the hell are we going to listen? It's not even a debate. Not even a debate.
We launched PFL Europe, and we are launching PFL Mideast.
When's that?
This is going to launch in April of 2024.
Wow.
And we are going to launch PFL Africa in April of 2025. So,
damn, see, this is what I think is interesting. Like I said, for the next generation, Middle East, Africa, you know, they already got PFL Europe, is these are like prospect series where they're taking the talent. And if you become a champion there, then they'll bring you to the big show. So it's a good way to like take this foreign talent. If you can snatch up these 4-0 guys and then take them early and then build the next star. I'll tell you how the PFL emerges as a top player in MMA and co-leads with the UFC. Luck. The only way is they got to find their own, like Conor McGregor or a Sean O'Malley or a Habib. Regardless, right? Fans will never, for the most part, at least in my eye, how I think of MMA, it's hard to ever say that X fighter outside of the UFC will be like the baddest man on the planet. Granted, Francis Ngannou, there's an argument for that. And a lot of people would even argue Patchy Mix at bantamweight, but very, very few on that one. But it's real. This here, though, like even the homegrown talent, they can be big names, they can be awesome, but like casuals too, that everybody will always say, but they ain't in the UFC. So taking the next talent on the come up and then people seeing spectacular things and a strong personality, that's going to be the key.
you're going to have 2 more complaints unless I settle this. Yeah. 2 more complaints unless I settle this. And obviously, we're building the Champions League of MMA, where, to your question, your comment with your roundtable earlier, we're trying to create a path, a true global system of MMA. Where you fight in Africa, you become the champion. You move to the PFL League.
Okay.
You fight in Europe, you're champion. You move to the PFL League. There's a system in football. You go to Pop Warner. You go to high school. You go to Alabama. You go to the NFL.
That's interesting. So he's saying he's trying to make it a system. Like PFL's trying to take over the whole scene. Like they're everywhere. PFL's all over the world. You're an up-and-coming fighter. Hey, sign with PFL. You'll have a chance to make it to the big show. Interesting. But it's about, can they get the signees? Well, I'll be honest, money talks. Number one. It's all about the dollar signs they're throwing, man. Everybody wants UFC, though. Every kid right now that's pursuing MMA, they want to fight in the UFC. Let's not forget that that's the dream, number one. Big dollars can talk, though. Big dollars can always talk. But UFC, come on.
So I started at America Online, built a company.
Part of the Chicago Cubs, right?
Chicago Cubs.
Youngest executive in baseball.
Youngest signed Sammy Sosa to his first deal.
Did you really? Wow.
So at age 29, you know, and then I started the venture capital firm, Steve Case and Ted Leonsis, and we did several companies that people know of.
So this guy's a very good corporate businessman. The guy's made a lot of money moving up the ranks and taking over companies. So, I mean, impressive, man. He's definitely a smart dude.
Sweetgreen, Kava, Clear, DraftKings, Sport Radar, Scopely.
Work with DraftKings, too. That's good for them because they didn't need to get on that betting. Listen.
All these companies that are, you know, were PFL. They were all middle school kids that went to college, right? And so to me, what I'm fighting for is to create something innovative that's never been.
He wants to create a product that isn't the UFC. He's trying to not knock off the UFC. He's trying to do something different and give it a shot to work and make it more like sport instead of like the promotion of a fight. But it's still the fight game nonetheless.
We innovated. We did something different. You know, we took a lot of arrows at the beginning. You guys don't get it. This season won't work. And to me, the answer I always give is I don't like college basketball, but I watch March Madness. Mm-hmm. I know what that is.
See, the thing about Don Davis that's so true, and I think everybody that sees this and agrees, he is not a hardcore fight fan. He's not watching every prelim of X, Y, and Z card forever. He got into MMA because he saw a big money opportunity. Now he's into the sport because, you know, he wants to support it. He wants to make dollars. He's a businessman. Dana White loved the fight game from the start, and that will be the ultimate difference between the two. And that's why I couldn't see PFL contending. They can't contend, man. And I think the season thing is not crazy good. I'm not crazy about it. I never have been. Never have been crazy about the seasons. But you know what? I'm more interested now if Sergio Pettis... Well, granted, no, they don't have bantamweight. Damn it. I'm more interested now, though. I'm more interested now with some Bellator guys.
What do you need to do as a brand to start selling more tickets? Because, you know, you see that event on Friday, the Bellator event, that was a pretty good house in Chicago. Great. I saw your event in Paris. That was a phenomenal house. Yeah. But sometimes these events, and I understand why you do them, the Atlanta ones, they're not big crowds.
You're totally right.
And that comes across on television. Yep. How do you change that?
Yeah, they really don't have big events. Like when I watch PFL, I'm like, dude, nobody's there. It's like an empty house, essentially. It's at a small venue. It's like at the rec center down the street.
Look, it's a great question. And from the very beginning, you can't do everything as a company. And we made the audacious bet to be global right away. So fighters from 25 countries and broadcast partners globally. But as soon as you do that, you lose local fighters selling tickets in local areas. You lose the Cedric Doumbé, Paris. You lose what Bellator gets when they go to Ireland. Because we have the league season.
Because of the league, he doesn't want to sell tickets because they can't specialize the cards to bring X talent from X place to that place for the event, and because of the lack of undercards. I understand what he's saying here. And then he says also, which I don't even need to play the clip, that like the ticket sales were like the 5th most important thing for them, you know, throughout their product. It just wasn't something that they were overly concerned about.
There's no undercard. Right? During the league season, there's no undercards. You have no opportunity to put the Atlanta fighters in Atlanta. Grown up enough that we need that muscle, so you'll see us do more of that next year. We have the fighters now that we can move around the product.
So now he wants to do more ticket sales. He wants bigger events with fans, which the fans make the damn sport, nonetheless. That's number one. Obviously, they have a good television experience, but the in-person experience is important too.
So certainly Bellator that you'll see us start to have those kind of $500,000, $700,000, $900,000 gates, I think, in 2024. But that historically has certainly been, I don't want to say by design, because we'd all like to have 5,000 tickets sold, but we accepted it because our strategies were elsewhere.
Where's the love for Canada, my fellow Canadians? No events in Canada yet? Can we get, I mean, Olivier Aubin-Mercier is one of your best fighters.
We've got to do it.
Yes.
We've got to do it. And I think
they do got to bring it to Canada. They got PFL everywhere, but they don't have a PFL Canada? Come on, PFL. They don't got a PFL Canada. What's up with that? And you got OAM, one of your best fighters. Yeah, bring it to Canada for Ariel Helwani's sake here. I think, honestly, it's bringing it to Canada because there's some tough Canadians, yo. Like, the Canadian people are underrated for their toughness. Let's get to 44.50. There's something good here. This is good info.
deal, by the way.
Really, because the TV deal's up as well with TSN.
We had a lot of interest in Canada.
Okay.
We had 3 bidders in Canada. I know you'll be happy to know.
Yes. Break some news for us. Where are we going?
But we will break news.
Right,
in fact, I'm going to let Pete Murray break it with you because he personally did it.
He did it, okay.
He did it. He was so good.
And will this all come at the same time, all these big announcements?
Yes.
So when? Around Christmas?
2 weeks after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Early December.
Pretty soon. Okay.
But we should be in Canada.
Yes.
Because we do have great Canadian fighters, and we should do that.
Is that, like, do you know everywhere that you're going in 2024?
No.
You don't?
No,
What percentage do you know? Like, you know,
well, we have the TV schedule. We don't have the event schedule yet.
Okay, so
They got the TV schedule, but no event schedule. I mean, this part is honestly, I drew it out a little too long.
Got to build that after the TV schedule just got done a week ago.
Wow, okay. Do you know when your first event of 2024 of any kind will be?
We know the league season starts in April.
Okay.
So we know that exact date, and Pete will come on here and announce all that with you. But we don't know yet. We're looking at early March to start the Bellator International Champion Series, but we don't have that date yet.
Okay.
They want to start early March for the Bellator International Championship Series, but they also want to do the champion versus champion card, which is so confusing. Then you're going to do that in February. Or we're doing the Bellator International Championship Series with the Bellator versus PFL card. That's the first event. So the first send-off event is, or the first start-off event, I should say, is Bellator versus PFL. That would make more sense, because if not, this doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense then. Let's hear what he says the goals are for PFL. Let's fast forward a bit. There wasn't a ton of chunk. It's, him talking about he's going to be the new face, or is he going to be the new face? He sees himself more as the commissioner as opposed to the promoter. And he compares himself not to Dana White, but to Adam Silver from basketball, from the fucking WNBA, or from the NBA. You know what I'm saying?
It's fantastic, and I've always said the same thing. UFC is a great company, and they invented this industry. This is not about taking share or shifting share. MMA is growing. MMA is growing 10% a year. Every other sport, 2 to 3%. They're going to do well. We're going to just do really, really well. And I'm excited to have my new teammates at Bellator. I'm excited to have all our new fighters propelling us forward, and we're going to win. The next time we're on here, when people
they're going to win,
laugh that we're going to be a co-leader, we're going to be a co-leader. Just like
I think that the mentality of a co-leader is always second place. It's like if I always said, I wanted to be just as good as the world champ. No, bro, you want to beat the world champ. Because of that, they will always stay in second place. They will always stay in second place just because of that. That mentality difference between the UFC.
You're in MMA, flat out. But we do things different. We think different. We innovate different. We don't have dogma. We co-promote. We give fighters opportunity. We let them box. We give them 50% pay-per-view share.
That's pretty good, though, that they're willing to let fighters box and the 50% pay-per-view share. But the issue is, ain't nobody buying the pay-per-views at the rate they're going.
We think different, and we're the co-leader. They do what they do. Fantastic. We do what we do. Market's big enough for 2 very, very, very big, valuable companies.
That word co-promote is a very interesting word in MMA. Are you open to the deals that they have with Ryzen or other promotions? Or when you say co-promote, you just mean PFL Bellator?
No. I mean, we would do John Jones and Ngannou.
Right.
We would give them more money.
Of course they want to do John Jones versus Ngannou because it finally gets that like PFL off the ground. UFC will never do it. They don't need to do it. Just because it makes money for Dana White, he can make more money elsewhere. He doesn't have to do that, and he never will.
I'd let Dana run the show and talk to the guys. You give fans what they want, it all works out.
He was asked about that recently and said it was the dumb question of the night. Did you see that?
I saw that, and I told him, I said, there's only 3 things in it for you. 1, for the fans, give them the fight they want. 2, for the sport, really decide who's number 1. And 3, make a lot of money for yourself and be the biggest pay-per-view of the year.
That's just not how it works, man. Dana White, he's got his territorialness towards his product too. He's not going to share the love with PFL. Come on, man. Don Davis is a good mind. He's in the right place, and I think they got potential. I do. I think they got potential. This is this one interesting leak here to end this thing off. There's a leak right here. Listen to this.
Invasion.
I'm going to text right after this.
Wear Bellator shirts and say,
I think it's a good idea.
That would be fun.
Oh, I'll credit you.
Yeah, you need to sign Michael Venom Page too. He's a free agent. I don't know if you're.
No, I thought he signed with UFC.
Oh, is that a done deal?
Well, I saw some tweet on news. I saw some tweet on it.
Anyway,
he said he saw something on it, but wouldn't he know that that's a done deal because he knows they're not with the roster? Wouldn't that be at the front of his mind? Because Michael Venom Page is one of the most popular fighters outside of the UFC. So maybe Michael Venom Page is heading to the UFC. How this thing ends off, they kind of just sign off, bullshit and banter. They say, hey, it was good seeing you. And Don Davis says he's going to come back as a co-leader of the UFC. So that's pretty much everything to know about this UFC and PFL deal, which I find very interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed my reaction to it. I normally don't do these type of reactions, but I've been wanting to get into them. And I said, you know what? Instead of me just sitting here listing everything off, I'm better off going through the interview and giving my take piece by piece on Don Davis and his PFL buyout of Bellator, I guess absorption of Bellator, and, you know, what the future holds for it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and turn those post notifications on. I appreciate everybody for watching. Let me know what you think of this Bellator and PFL deal in the comments. And do you think it lasts? Because I don't think there's no timetable on it, but I could see it 2 years. I could see it 2 years, and then it's PFL International Championship Series. Much love, my people. I appreciate you all tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace, everybody.